I brought this as my sweat rag for tonight. And I've been listening to that preaching going on. And I told my wife, I'm going to have to go out there and get the preacher's towel. Especially after Brother Lewis got done. I don't know. I feel like a dog tonight. And somebody has just said, sick 'em. Appreciate so much my brethren in this area. I have worked with some of you, the Williams family, on several campaigns.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Brother and Sister Jones are here tonight. It's good to see y'all. I haven't seen them in a long time. I told Bobby the other night, we was conversing back and forth. We're heading on a campaign in Portage, Michigan. You're still welcome to join us, by the way, if you hadn't signed up. It's 10 days. I'll work you like a dog, and ain't that right? Yeah, Bobby's shaking his head. But I told him, I said, listen, you deliver a message to Patricia for me. I said, you just tell her one thing. I said, you tell her tomorrow's going to be a beautiful day for her. And when she gets that look on her face as to why, I say, you just tell her she's going to get to see Rick. I wanted to see the face. Bobby said he's going to tell me what she said afterwards. So, no, it's very good to be with you. Appreciate so much Brother Clay and the work that he does here, and all of the brethren as they work. I know that when you do something like this, you don't just start the day of the lectureship. This is a yearly work sake for this congregation and all of those that are involved. And there are many people behind the scenes that are working hard, and we appreciate all of your labor of love and your work of faith that you are doing during this particular time. And I will tell you this, I appreciated that catfish. That was some good stuff. Now, I've had catfish. Now listen, you can't get real good catfish in San Angelo, Texas. You just can't. Now listen, there's a good barbecue place down there, and there is some good Mexican places down there, but I've not found a good catfish place yet. Now, I will say that there's 103 more restaurants that I need to try, but I have not found a good catfish place yet. So thank you very much for the work that you have done. You know, the idea of this lectureship, looking back into the book of Acts, and being able to reproduce the first century church, the first century church in the 21st century. Brother Williams, there are some people who would tell you that you have established a false premise here. There are some people that are going to tell you, and they're going to tell us, that they just are not interested in establishing the first century church in the 21st century. They're not interested in that kind of stuff. In fact, they don't want it. They're not just not interested. They will be actively opposed to the first century church. They don't want any of that kind of stuff. That messes with their business, you see. That messes with their friendship. That messes with their family relationships. And they don't want any of that stuff. And listen, if we're going to talk about the new hermeneutic, then let's just get to the heart of the matter. That is the problem. That's why they want the new hermeneutic. That old hermeneutic divided people. It divided the righteous from the unrighteous. It divided the saint from the sinner. You see, it divided people. And so they don't want that kind of stuff. They don't want to have to tell them that their grandfather, who was a faithful, whatever he was in the religious world, died outside of Christ and is now burning in an eternal hell that is prepared for the devil and his angels. They don't want to have to contemplate that. That's our world today, you see. What we don't want, we don't have to have. We live in America, right? Land of the free. I'm free to do whatever I want to do. Get out of my business. Get off of my porch. That's what they want. Now listen, I'm just telling you the truth up front. We might as well just lay it out there, right? Ain't no sense in tiptoeing around any tulips. Let's just get straight to it. They want what they cannot have if we have the first century church. And so it's important then for us to understand. There are some people, they don't mind you talking about reformation. Because reformation is just a change. That's all it really is. They don't mind you talking a little change in things. They don't, listen, everybody changes. Last time I was here, I was 50 pounds lighter. Didn't have as much gray hair. Matter of fact, I had a little bit more right up here somewhere. You know, what is it with barbers today? I've asked every barber I went to in St. Angelo, can you feel this spot? Not a single one of them said so. A lot of changes go on. People don't mind change. You know, let's just change and that's okay. But that's not restoration. That is reformation. The Reformation, and by the way, I'm not a Protestant either. The Protestants are those who oppose. There's no such thing as a Protestant today, evidently. Not even the Protestants oppose or protest the Catholic Church anymore. Even though they worship Mary and pray to Mary and have a pope, a little God here upon the earth, they don't even care about that stuff anymore. Let's just have full fellowship and open fellowship with Catholicism. Oddest thing I've ever seen. Let's just drop down all the barriers of fellowship and let's just open up the doors. My question is, why are we worrying about Hinduism then? And Muslim and all that kind of stuff? Why worry about that stuff? Let's just join hands and sing Kumbaya. You know, let's get after it. If there's not a barrier of fellowship between good and evil, why are we here? I mean, what about Satan worship? There ain't no barrier. If we're going to tear down the barriers, why not? I don't see any problem with that. As long as we're going to give up the Bible, as long as we ain't going to interpret and understand the Bible properly, then let's just improperly do whatever we want to do. You see? There are people that don't mind reformation, they just don't want restoration. There are people that like pragmatism. You know, listen, if it works, let's do it. You know, I'll be honest with you, I don't care if it works or not. Because I'll tell you this, the Bible does not work. Listen, be very careful. I want you to understand what I'm saying. It does not work to convert a man that does not want to be converted. But now listen, it will accomplish everything God sent it to accomplish. Isaiah chapter 55, verses 5 through 11, right? It will accomplish what He sent it to accomplish. You know what He sent it to accomplish? To condemn some men's souls to an eternal damnation, so that they would understand when they get to the judgment day why they are there on the left with the goats. My apologies to all of you on this side. But you understand, you see, there's not a single person that is not going to, or is going to claim ignorance on that day. And the Word of God is sent to be a what's the word I'm looking for? A judgment against them. That was the wrong word. I don't know. A judgment. It is life, but a judgment against them. That's the couple of gray hairs over here, by the way. But you see, as long as it works, they're okay with it. They don't care, just as long as it works. That's all they're interested in. Do I got a preacher that will bring them in? Do I got a preacher? You're talking about entertaining them. Whew, I'd like to get paid like some of those entertainers. Listen, I'm taller than, what is that guy that does all those movies every now and then, Scientology kind of guy. Tom Cruise. I'm taller than Tom Cruise. Okay, I ain't better looking. But I'm taller than Tom Cruise. You don't even have to give me any lifts. I'm at least that tall. Listen, I'm at least as ugly as some of those other ones that are up there. I don't mind being paid that kind of money. But I'll tell you this, now listen, what they do is hard work. You think they're just up there getting paid, just stand there and go? They're not getting paid to do that. It's hard work. You got to work hard at your craft if you want to get to the top at Hollywood. There's a lot of other things you got to do too, but that's a different lesson altogether. But see, some people don't mind as long as it's practical. As long as it's bringing everybody in, as long as everybody is in a general way happy about things, then that's really all people are concerned about. Mercy. That's not restoration. That's not restoring my soul back to the gospel pattern. Now listen, you think about all of the things that we're talking about. Let's just go to the text. Acts chapter 14. Beginning in verse number 8. This is a beautiful story, by the way. He says, and there was a certain man at Lystra, impotent in his feet, being a cripple from his mother's womb, who had never walked. The same heard Paul speak, who steadfastly beholding him, and perceiving that he had faith to be healed, said with a loud voice, straighten or stand upright on thy feet. And he leaped and walked. And when the people saw what Paul had done, by the way, they're going to respond properly here. They understand what is taking place. At least initially, the response is correct. Nicodemus referenced this to Jesus. We know that no man can do these things that thou doest, except God be with him. They understood it is not within the ability of man to do what Paul had done. This is a miraculous activity that has occurred. And they understand that. And so they respond by lifting up their voices and saying in the speech of the Lycaonians. By the way, that becomes very important for maybe just a translation issue here. It's not a really important one, but it is a translation issue. He says, in the speech of the Lycaonians, the gods are come down to us in the likeness of men. They understood that only a God, that's their understanding, a God has that kind of power. And you and I would say it this way. Only God has that kind of power, right? So they're responding properly in an initial fashion to the message and the activity that is going on. But it says they called Barnabas Jupiter in my King James, and Paul Mercurius, or Mercury, because he was the chief speaker. Now, this kind of interested me, just for an issue of translation here. I find it interesting that the King James, as well as some others, utilize the word Jupiter and the word Mercury here. It is not the original. And why they chose to do this is kind of interesting to me. Now, some would tell me that the reason why they chose to do this was because this was a Roman station among these individuals. And that is true. A lot of Roman soldiers were translated or transferred to this particular area, and the area of Lystra then was a part of a Roman colony. Jupiter and Mercury are Roman gods, equal to the Greek gods. By the way, the Romans were a very unique set of people. They were thieves, basically, okay? Now, I mean that in a kind way, okay? They were thieves. What they did is they went in and overtook an area and took the best at what they thought was there, and then they gave what was the best Roman names. So what they did is they went in among the Greeks, and when they conquered the Greeks, they said, there's Zeus. We don't want to call him Zeus anymore. We want to call him Jupiter. And there is Hermes. We don't want to call him Hermes anymore. We want to call him Mercury. That's what the Romans did. Kind of like Catholicism today. You see, Catholicism would go into a society and they would overtake a society. They would, by force, by the way, they would go into, for example, the Scandinavian countries. I heard somebody talk about Christmas earlier, and if we knew the origins of some of this stuff, we would shy away from it. You ever burn a Yule log in Christmas time? You know what the Yule log was burned for? It was burned in honor of the god Thor in Scandinavian countries. And the Catholics said, we got to get these people on our side, and so now we're going to say that a Yule log is burned in honor of the thunder god Jehovah. And see, they did what the Romans did. I wonder if there's any correlation to them being the Roman Catholic Church then. All they did was go into a country and steal from that country what they were doing to worship their gods, and they said, we're going to call this Christmas. We do need to be dangerous on some of those things. At least the knowledge of that is important. Now, why is that important to our lesson tonight? It's important for this reason. The word here is Hermes. And did you read the title? I'm not saying did you hear the title read. Did you read the title? Now, did you understand what Clay was talking about when you read it? Were you not like me and you said, huh? Hermesneutical? What is that? Are we going swimming or something? No, we're not going swimming. It's not nautical, right? It's hermeneutics, right? By the way, you start talking about hermeneutics in the church today, and people got like a deer in headlights, right? That kind of look. What? That ain't even biblical. Who is he talking about? Hermeneuticals. It's right here in the text. That's what he is saying. A disciple of Hermes were the interpreters. You see? They were the ones who told you what the gods said. That's why Paul, who is the spokesman, you see? He is the spokesman, so he is the Hermes. He is the Mercury of the text. He is the one who is the interpreter of the gods. Now, they made another mistake here. They made a mistake in thinking that if this is Hermes, then that other guy has to be Zeus, right? Because Zeus was always the very distinguished one. You see, Barnabas was the older of the two, you see. He was evidently more distinguishable than the Apostle Paul. Really? Boy, does every speaker do the same thing to this? What? Okay. All right. All right. Listen, I'm about out of my introduction, so... but listen, here's the ideal, the hermeneutics, you see. That's what we're talking, the science of interpretation. Now, there are people telling us today that there ain't no such thing as a science of interpretation. Listen, I've talked to some of these people. I'm sure you have too. I'll be honest with you, I can't understand them. I've asked them 100 times, if once. I've asked them. Listen, let me tell you very quickly. You want a proper hermeneutics? Here it is. Command, example, and necessary inference. They like to refer to it as sinning for short. C-E-N-I, sinning. You can call it what you want to. God speaks in commands. God gives us approved examples and unapproved examples. We should follow the example of Peter. After he denied the Lord, he repented and came back. We should not follow the example of Judas, who went out and hung himself. You see, both of those are examples. One is approved and one is not. But they're both examples for us in the Bible. And then there's necessary inference. Pray tell me this. Have you ever read in your Bible where it said the Apostle Paul repented of his sins? By the way, if you say yes, you're lying. Or you're ignorant. That's just all. You haven't read it. It does not say that. I know he did by implication. Necessary inference. You know what the difference between implication and necessary inference is? Listen, necessary inference is what I got to do when somebody is talking. I got to only infer what they necessarily have said. Implication is from the speaker's vantage point. I only imply what I imply. That's it. Nothing more, nothing less. You see? That's Bible hermeneutics. By the way, that's 101. Dash little a, I guess, maybe, right? 101, that's what we're talking about. By the way, add to that the idea of Bible silence. Bible silence. People want to mock and ridicule Bible silence like they don't know what we're talking about. Oh, they know what we're talking about. Like I mentioned in the beginning, brethren, the majority of these people, they know exactly what they're doing.
Yes, sir.
And they know why they're doing it.
That's right. Amen.
They don't like this. They don't like to see all these empty seats. They don't like it. And they want to fill that building, and they got an idea of how to do it. You do it like the Baptist is doing it, and you fill it like that. What they don't understand is that the Baptist ain't filling it. You realize that the Church of Christ, even though we might be declining, we are the least of the decliners right now. Now, that's not a badge of honor, by the way, but we are the least of the decliners. People are leaving the Baptist church by the droves. They're leaving Methodism, and pray to God they leave Presbyterianism, because Presbyterianism has left them. Homosexuality. Did you get the audacity? You're talking about little gods when they come out and say, we declare that homosexual marriages are Christian. Really? I thought only God could declare things like that. Man, I'll tell you what. I thought God was going to cause lightning to come down right then, or they were going to be eaten by worms, one of the two. Listen, 1 Peter chapter 4 and verse number 11. You mark it in your Bible. You memorize it. You have every one of your children memorize this, and you make sure that this is a staple in your home. If any man speak, let him speak as the oracles of God. You know what that means, right? It means that we speak where the Bible speaks, and we are silent where the Bible is silent. You know why I'm silent? I have no authority to speak. I got no authority. None. You see? So I'm silent on the matter. When God doesn't authorize anything, I have no authority then to say it's authorized. That's silence of Scripture, you see. We need our children to understand this. We need to start. Listen, we need. I'm not talking about the denominational world. We need to start calling Bible things by Bible names. Let's get rid of all this stupidity. You know, I can't even pronounce half the words that people are talking about today. And I'm like, you talking, is that from the Bible? No, it ain't from the Bible. I got it from my seminary. Listen, here's the problem. Let me just skip over here to the last page. Here's the problem. I'll start from the bottom. We have trained our preachers at poisonous wells. Is that not the truth? We got on the elders. Now listen, I have to juggle this, okay? I'm a preacher and an elder. Okay? So over here I'm going to talk about the elders. Over here I'm going to talk about the preachers. Right? But listen, we have trained our preachers at poisonous wells. When they start training themselves at Princeton, at Pepperdine, right? No offense to California, but Pepperdine ain't associated with the Lord's church any more than the University of Kentucky is. Y'all didn't even know Kentucky was associated with the Lord's church. It was in the day. That's been a long day back. But it was. It ain't no more. You see, we can't train our preachers there. I don't care what kind of education you have or not. I don't care what kind of... Listen, I work with some of the finest men in the world, I believe. But we don't introduce ourselves by that kind of stuff. I love the fact so many people have introduced themselves to me, and they have said, hi, my name is Brother. so-and-so. Didn't know anything about their educational background. What kind of religion introduces themselves by saying, I am an educated man? I've never met a plumber in my entire world who came to my door and said, hi, I'm Dr. Joe, I'm your plumber. But you know what? He probably makes more than some of those PhDs by the time he gets done. My apologies to every plumber here tonight. But you know what I'm talking about? Who introduces themselves that way? Only an elitist would introduce himself that way. We have trained our preachers at poisonous wells. And they have come back to us with Calvinism in their pocketbook. That's right. Man. But listen, that's just the last point. Now I go second to the last point. We have installed, and this has been hit on many times, but I think it deserves our intent conversation. We have installed men into the eldership who the primary qualification of any man for an elder is that he has to know the book. Now you say, wait a minute, I don't read that in. Of course you do. You can't live the book unless you know it. All right. You can't convict the gainsayer unless you know the book. You can't perform your shepherd responsibilities without knowing the book. That's the problem. We got to train up young boys and young men so that they can grow up with the character that stems from knowing the book. That's right. Amen. That's where it's all about. Our preachers don't know the book. They don't know how to deliver the book. They don't know how to interpret and study the book. They run to the internet every Saturday night to get their lesson off of the internet so they can go over it before they get into the pulpit. I got to quit. Y'all are killing me here. Listen, the brethren in St. Angelo won't even know what happened to me when I got home. 1 Samuel chapter 8. 1 Samuel chapter 8. Verses 1 through 9, and we'll close, and then 19 and 20. But I'm not going to read that. Y'all know this text is about Israel being fed up, by the way, with the leadership. Samuel had been a great prophet. He had been a great priest. But he had become a man who had lost his mind when it came to his own children. Installing those boys to lead Israel was a mistake. And it was going to cost Israel dearly. Bad leadership has consequences to it. And Samuel was a good man, but he made a poor choice with those children. And when the people are fed up with the leadership, by the way, maybe this is a lesson we ought to have in Washington, D.C. as well. When the people are fed up with leadership, bad leadership, selfish leadership, a leadership that wants to feed themselves instead of feeding the sheep, Isaiah says. You see? Bad leadership produces confusion in the church. Why do we have confusion in the church? Why are people clamoring to be like everybody else? We want a king so that we can be like all the other nations. You see? That's at the heart of the matter today. They want to be like all the other nations. They want to fit in when they go to work. They want to fit in when they go to recreate. They want to fit in when they go to church. And they want to be able to mingle with every other religious person in the world. And they want to fit in with that. Bad leadership produces a desire for the people to have something more than what God intended them to have. And so God is rejected. And today in our pulpits, God is being rejected. I've asked them, I said, listen, if you don't like sinning, if you don't like command, example, and necessary inference, if you don't think that Bible silence is the way that we are to interpret the Bible, pray tell me how to do it. Boy, you're talking about Bible silence. There's silence on the... Not one single person has ever told me what it is. I've searched through the journals. Listen, I may have to read them twice, but I can read journals that have PhD on the end of them. And not a single one of them are smart enough to tell me what the hermeneutics of the church ought to be. They don't know. And in fact, my friends, I will tell you, they don't care.
Yes, sir. That's right.
God gave them, in 1 Samuel chapter 8, a king after their own heart. And if we're not careful, we're going to get just what we want. Thank you very much.
Amen. Amen. Lord have mercy. This poor pit is hot, and he left one handkerchief up here, and I'll get it to him later. Let church say amen. Certainly our hearts have been thrilled.